Hello, I've come back to tell you another story. From the moment that I first went to dancing school, aged 4, and first trod the boards, I was stuck. Hook, line and sinker. Love at first sight. I was utterly convinced throughout nearly all of my school years that the theatre, in some form or other, would be my livelihood. In fact, it never was. And why was that? Because of another hazard. There was to be a gala concert in Chatham Empire to raise money for a disaster to a submarine. And I, representing the dancing school, together with a young man, were going to dance a formal pas de deux from one of the classical ballets. In the event, we never did, because at the rehearsal, he dropped me. Not intentionally, and it may have been my fault. Perhaps I jumped too soon, perhaps he wasn't looking, perhaps we were out of time with the music. Whatever, doesn't matter. The result of that was that I damaged my ankle. Not severely and permanently, but enough to mean that for some weeks or months I wasn't going to be concentrating on dance and the theatre. And it happened that this occurred just before I was due to take what in those days were O-levels. So I got stuck into my schoolwork, and to my amazement, I discovered that actually I liked things academic, and even more surprisingly, I was good at them. So, just before I went into the sixth form and had to start thinking about what I was going to do at university, I changed my mind entirely, and in the event, I went to university to read for an honours degree in physics. Everybody was amazed. Everybody, that is, apart from my mother's always knowing it friend, who was heard to say on one occasion, "I don't know why everyone should be so surprised that Jean is doing physics. She's always been very physical." I, over the years, have directed, performed in, choreographed, stage managed, crewed so many shows, musicals, operas and occasional straight plays that I have completely lost count how many. It's been a joy, and it's been a great pleasure to me to have what might be called a second string to my bow. If you've been struggling all day with a class of A-level physics, trying to inveigle them into understanding, for instance, the refraction of light through glass prisms, or if you've been all day struggling with directives from the DFE or the DES or whatever particular set of initials the Education Department is using at the time, you cannot go home and fret about them if in the evening you've got 30 people in front of you who've mostly got 2 left feet and you've got to teach them all a dance. It is a wonderful way of relaxing if you're not very good at just collapsing on a sofa with a book. And I've never been very good at that, until perhaps now. I'm better at it now. Of all the shows that I've done, most of them, I've been pleased to say, have been successful. And I've been pleased with what I have produced or performed in or choreographed. So it's rather odd that it's the ones where things went wrong that stick in the memory. And I'm going to tell you 2 of those. One now, and then I'll tell you another one tomorrow. There are 2 shows that I have directed where I could, and sometimes have, devoted a whole talk to the disasters, in inverted commas, that occurred during that production. Disasters which at the time seemed mortifying and upon reflection seem very funny. The first one concerns the magic flute. Mozart wrote the magic flute as his last opera, and it was written to entertain a club. And some people have called it Mozart's pantomime. It certainly has an eclectic mixture of characters and a rather convoluted story. When I directed the magic flute, there were more women in the company than there were men, and the music is written for mostly a men's chorus and then the principals. Our musical director modified the chorus music so that it could be sung by a 4-part chorus and utilise all the ladies. And one of the things that I had a hand in was choosing the sort of costumes that people would wear. Bearing in mind that the chorus was going to be male and female, and I wanted them all to look the same, I, with the help of the wardrobe mistress, put together a costume which consisted of little black breeches, little black tunic, a coloured sash, and a coloured turban, tights and buckled shoes. Both genders could wear this costume, and both felt comfortable wearing the costume. And so the wardrobe mistress set about to make costumes for everyone, while rehearsals proceeded. In the magic flute there is a character called the bird catcher, Papageno, and he sings a song about catching birds. And I arranged that while he was singing his song, a group of 6 teenage girls would dance the birds. They would mimic the movements of birds, hopefully in an elegant and attractive way, while he sang. Now at that time, besides the wardrobe mistress, we had a gentleman called Archie, who always made the props. A very taciturn gentleman, but very good at making props. And I went to him and said that there was a bird catcher in the show, and could he possibly make for the bird catcher a little bird cage? And he said that he would. So we arrive at the first night, the dress rehearsal first night, and the bird cage appears, and before I see it, he says, "I did your bird cage. They won't all get in it." When I looked, I was amazed and appalled. The bird cage was enormous. And why was it enormous? Because Archie came every week to make the tea, and he had seen the group of 6 teenage girls rehearsing the bird dance, and had made a cage for birds of teenage girl size to be enclosed within. I drew breath with horror and thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I don't think the girls themselves would be very keen on being asked to spend a good deal of the show in a cage. Well, we couldn't not use the cage because the poor man would be so unhappy, so hurt. So I said to him, Archie, your cage is magnificent. Could you make a small replica by tomorrow for Papageno to actually carry? Yeah, he said, if you like. And I sent out an SOS that very night to the company saying if any of them had small children who would like to be in the show, to be little baby birds, then that would be very helpful and attractive. And the wardrobe mistress looked a bit aghast because she knew the next request was going to be could she make baby bird costumes by the next night, which she did. And having baby birds on board was no bad thing, because whenever small children are in a show, it always sells extra tickets. I heaved a sigh of relief, and although it was a very short notice, that problem was solved. And then we get to the first dress rehearsal in costume, and all of the company arrive on stage in their little uniforms. Black breeches, black tunics, coloured sashes, coloured turbans. The wardrobe mistress had chosen different coloured sashes and turbans for each member of the chorus so that the whole thing looked brighter and more cheerful, and she'd chosen a particular orange and a particular luminous pink and a particular white and a particular browny colour and a particular turquoisey colour, and I stood at the back of the auditorium and looked in horror at what I had generated on the stage. A whole chorus of Licorice Allsort, Bertie Bassett men. I didn't say a word. I couldn't say anything, and I hoped that nobody else noticed. They all look exactly like the illustration at that time on the packet of Licorice Allsorts. In my horror, I hoped that nothing else was going to go wrong. Now, there is an entrance of the priests in the Magic Flute, and the particular piece of music is very limpy music. It has a sort of bounce to it. And there is a chief priest who is a tenor and a chief priest who is a baritone. And I had cast 2 men for these 2 parts because they had excellent voices. As it happened, both of them limped. One limped because as a child he'd had polio, and one limped because as a young man he'd been in a motorbike accident. And when it came to the moment of the arrival of the priests, one team of priests entered from one side, and one team of priests entered from the other. And to my horror, the priests, the chief of priests, limped in mirror image of each other. Standing next to me at the back of the auditorium was a chap who at that time used to write for the local paper. And he said, muttering, initiation procedure. And I had no idea what he was talking about. Until many years afterwards, I watched an episode of Midsummer Murders where the trusty sergeant joined the Freemasons to help solve the crime and had to go through a Freemason's initiation ceremony with his trouser legs rolled up to his knees, one foot incapacitated by the removal of a shoe and a pebble in the other, so that he arrived limping. I had inadvertently displayed the same prescience, without knowing it, as I had done many years ago, because it wasn't an accident that the music was limpy. It was an accident that my priests were limpy. Mozart was a Freemason. I thought I'd got away with it all, particularly costumes, until the next time I directed Magic Flute, I was trying to sell some tickets to a friend, and he said, yes, I saw your earlier Magic Flute, the definitive Bertie Bassett Freemason version. Bye-bye.